So my childhood was magical. It was absolutely beautiful and idyllic. I lived in a Venezuela which is completely different than the Venezuela now. It was a place of promise and potential. It was Caracas in the 70s and 80s, and in this remarkable country we had a beautiful house, a beautiful garden, and it was really every child's dream. And at the same time there was the figure of my father, who was immensely successful and very engaging and very focused on the now. With all these colours and all this beauty and all this contrast, there was this man who seemed to go perfectly well in this world, and yet there were little bits, like little cracks in this sort of technicolor world, little bits of darkness that seeped through. So when I was a little girl, I would wake in the middle of the night because my father would be screaming, and he would be covered in sweat, and he'd be screaming, having these horrendous nightmares, and his screams were in a language that I didn't understand. For me, the mystery of my father really started when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I had a detective club, and we had been spying that afternoon on my father. One of the detectives reported that my father had moved a box from one place where he fixed watches, one long dark room, to the library. And that afternoon I waited for everyone to go, and I went and I found that box. And when I opened it, it just had papers. There was an old passport, and then all of a sudden I realized that one of the papers was a pink card, and it had a photograph. It was my father as a very young man, and it was dated Berlin 1943, and it had a stamp of Hitler. The line where it said name, it had someone else's name. Just was the most jarring moment. It was terrifying, and I think that's when I realized that there was a whole side to my father that I knew nothing about. This book started as a personal journey, and it's really also a detective story, a story of how I pieced together the mystery of my father, and how in doing so I discovered this wonderful, vibrant family that I had in Prague before the war. It's really just a story of, well, it's a story of identity and family, and what makes us who we are and what keeps us alive.